Alright, how are y'all doing today? This is Coastal Woodworking and Design. We are on our way to the new shop this morning, and it is a lovely day, as you can tell. A little bit further ahead, the water actually goes all the way across the road. I didn't film that part, but let's go ahead and get started on this video. Alright, so here's the build. The build is actually a retail counter for our shop. As you can tell, we've never been in there before. We laid out on the ground some painter's tape to give us a basic shape and form we were looking for. If you see the one on the wall, that's because we were trying to see how high we were going to make it go up. As for materials, we are using probably about 70% scrap wood. We had some 2x4s in the shop that we cut 1x1s off of. So they are the full length, they just aren't the full width. But we needed to get rid of them, and when you open up a new business, obviously you are trying to save money. So we're going to go ahead and access those pieces of wood and see what we can put together. Some of them are 8 foot long, some of them are 3 foot long. Just depends on which piece. So you'll see throughout the build, we kind of go through and kind of pick and choose the pieces that we use for the build. The pieces that were purchased, we bought some cedar so that we could trim the actual retail counter in cedar. And if you notice on the right side of the screen, those are actually cedar fence boards. We're going to use those for the top and the shelving on the build. I'll show you what we did with those here in a little bit. So as you can see, we're cutting the pieces to the sizes we think we need currently. As you'll notice throughout the build, that actually changes as well. Those are the 2x4s I was talking about that had the 1x1s cut off of them for a separate build. You'll notice as we build the cabinet that you'll see some regular 2x4s, and then you'll see some of the cut-off 2x4s that we're actually using. So we wanted to access everything and get it to the size that we needed. We weren't really worried about the width of the board. Again, starting a new business, you gotta save money. This is Joe putting pocket holes. Alright, so let's get this build started. And if you watch me right here, I am not going to use glue. I'm not sure why, but I didn't. I'll fix it later. I want to make sure the boards are flat to the floor so we get a good base on it. It's going to be a heavy piece, so it's going to level itself anyway, but I'm going to make sure we're as straight and flat as possible while we go there. So we made a little jig so we could keep it so far off the edge because we plan on putting the tin in the build later. You'll notice we're putting those boards on wrong. But we're using glue now, so I guess that's a plus. So now we're noticing that was a mistake. We're turning it, jigging it in, and making sure that we got the boards right, which that board will eventually be moved as well, as you'll soon see. Joe the camera hog here. Now we're looking at it saying, where are we going to have a foot step? fix that. I feel like I need to say we have no plans for this build. This is 100%. We just walked in the door and said, all right, we need a retail counter. My wife kind of gave us an idea of what she wanted. She wanted something rustic and kind of matches her products, which is bath products, and she's a cobblestone bath company. We're actually Coastal Woodworking, and we're going in the same shop. Our furniture will be sold in this shop, and she's going to sell her products as well. So, yeah, that should probably give us a little say on the retail cabinet and how the build goes, but that wasn't the case. Anyway, using scrap wood, no plans. Pretty proud of how this thing turned out as we get it put together. I've edited out a lot of the conversation that we had in this to get the video to where it's the length that it is now, but this was about a day and a half, almost 2-day build to get it to where it is, the final product that you'll see here at the end. Now, if you'll notice, because we flipped that other board up and we didn't shorten that end, we haven't noticed that yet. But that caused a little bit of a problem at the end, but we went ahead and just made an angled board that connected it, and that was the desk on that side anyway, so it actually ended up looking pretty good. We took the mistake and turned it into a positive. Right here we're putting up the middle boards because that's where the cedar fence planks are going to go across the top from one side to the other. Of course, there's Joe on his phone. Little support. Make sure we got the board. Don't want it to sag in the future. And that's actually one of the first pieces, or purchase pieces, we've used in this, other than that one long board you see on the front. That's one of the cedar siding pieces on the floor we're trying to set up. There's that glue that I forgot to use. Looks like you used a little bit too much. So that's the cedar trim that we're going to use on the entire piece. So that is purchased board right there. So I started on this side and we were measuring out how far to put the screws. And as you can see, it's kind of clunky how we were doing it. And here shortly you're going to see I'm just going to go ahead and go to the other side so we can make sure we get the same amount of screws at the same distance as the rest. I told him to stop right there. So this made it so much easier because then we could just bounce all the way down the tape measure and make sure all the screws were in the same spot level. And he's got a little jig to make sure that they're the exact distance up as well. So here's the tin. We're going to put this on here. Again, no plans. So we weren't exactly sure how we were going to do it. So we're kind of putting it together, making a plan as we go, if you will. So it's at this point. No, it actually wasn't at this point. Here shortly I'm going to realize that isn't in the complete center because the counter is actually wider than the desk. But come up with a good idea to take care of that. That'll be up here shortly. So that's another cedar trim piece that we did purchase. We're just making sure that the top's going to go on as well as the bottom. Measure it out. We've got another piece of tin over here that we need to put together. We're going to have to snip it off. we went ahead and put 2 pieces on there and snipped them at the same time. That way we made sure we got the exact same length. And right there I put the bottom piece over the top piece, which I guess I cut it out, but I did end up fixing that to where the top piece hangs over the bottom piece. Want to make sure the desk is 30 inches. Top to bottom. Make sure it's square and level. Get it in there. This thing is pretty big. Not sure the exact measurements, but for reference, we put a fat boy in there so that you could see exactly how wide the thing is. Since we're making the desk 30 inches high, we wanted to make sure that the shelving underneath was also 30 inches high so we could go straight across. About there was when we realized that the piece was sticking out a little bit too far. We knew we were going to have to come up with an idea. But like I said, you'll see at the end, it worked out well. So we're measuring with, we're using scrap pieces, so some of the pieces aren't necessarily long enough. So we are trying to figure out how we're going to work around that. So all the other inside boards are 23 inches. So that puts the piece about 26 inches. And that end piece, the inside piece, we actually had to cut at 26 to make work. And looking back on the build, we should have just went ahead and cut it back right then. But we already had the whole front attached to it. So we went ahead and we're going to overcome and adapt. So I took these planks and I was going to joint them and get them flat, and realized that they were too thin to use, and if I kept doing that, then basically I was going to run out of board because they're nowhere near 100% flat. So we're going to go ahead and cut them and put them up there, and later we're going to hand sand them, and it turned out really, really nice. We hit it with 60 grit, went up to 80, 150, and then 220. So literally like rubbing glass, super, super smooth. As you can see, we're trying to figure out the countertops underneath here and the desk. At this point, we didn't know what we were going to use for the shelving. We were, plywood came up, a few different things that we talked about. Since this was going to be a piece that everyone's going to see in the store, we were thinking it's just a retail counter for us, trying to save some money, build something that'll work. We ended up deciding we better build something that looks right, shows our abilities and the things that we can do. Even when using scrap, I grabbed a 1x there that wasn't going to work. As you can see, that 2x4 is up against the other 2x4 that we actually cut, so you can tell how narrow a lot of our pieces were under there. But we bounced back and we decided we were going to do those cedar planks on the desk and on the shelving and on the floor on the right side. We figured it would just look better to go all the way through. Same product. And it really did. It turned out great. Now we're building a little fence around the desk. My wife said she wanted her desk to be down into where people couldn't just look in or reach over the desk, in case she had some things on there. So putting a little fence around it kind of fit with the motif of the counter that was being built. It actually worked out really well, so we're trying to figure out the length of the cedar so we can cut that and put that down. Again, so the cedar boards, fence boards, and the cedar trim are the only purchased part of this entire build. As you can see, I'm trying to figure out how long pushing back on the boards they need to be so that we can get them on there without bending the boards. So here we're tying down the top onto the actual 2x4 before we put the trim in. And at this point we didn't know that we were going to trim the top as well. But so we were trying to make those screws fit as nicely as we could, even lengths from each other, every other board, that sort of thing. So those are marked, so all the screws are equidistant. I'll let you jump behind there with us. We're doing the same thing on the back. So you can see we've got the left and right trim on, talking about the actual trim on the sides now. Again, that trim will also be out of the same cedar. You can look in that corner, you'll see an angle board where I was talking about that we put in so that we could make up for the extra 3 inches that was sticking out. Again, it turned out well. So if you'll see, you can see where the tin splits. So the idea that we came up with is putting 3 pieces of trim equidistant. So each side the trim was 4 inches wide. So between 4 inches wide and 4 inches wide, that brought the distance to 120 inches apart. So we put the center board at exactly 60 and then measured out from there, so that we made sure the board that covered the split the tin was the exact same distance on the other side of that as well. And the part that I forgot to film of this, which I apologize, are the X's up on the front. So we're also going to put X's to make it look a little more farmhouse on the left and right side of the build. Turned out really good. So, taking the scrap wood that we had and some of the scrap pieces, no plans, and putting this all together in a couple of days. It worked out well. So here's the sanding that you're about to see. We're starting out, like I said, we hit it with 60, 80, 150, and 220 to end it off. And although it looks, in the end, when you see the video, it's going to look like it's still rough, it's actually smooth as glass. I was super surprised at how this turned out. Because if you look at the right side of the screen, that's super yellow. And it did not turn out like that once we got it all sanded down to the level that we wanted it to be. And that's the final product. So those are the X's I was talking about, and then the desk has the fence-like area. We got all the trim on. We actually treated the cedar. So as you can see, it looks a little bit rough, but truthfully, it is smooth as glass. And that's our build. That's the retail counter. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the bell and come back for more builds.